Ground Branch has been in early access since 2018. That's almost 8 years, and it's finally reached version 1.0. Now that should represent the moment when its authentic weapon handling, tactical environments, and uncompromisingly lethal combat are supported by a complete campaign, intelligent opposition, and the level of polish expected from a finished release. Unfortunately, that's not what version 1.0 delivers. The new campaign merely consists of 2 prologue missions. Proper friendly squad AI will not be available until post-launch update, and we do not have any kind of yardstick to measure when that might be. And even on the hardest available possible settings, the enemy AI remains lethally accurate but tactically completely inept. Ground Branch is therefore a very difficult game to review. Its underlying tactical systems can be exceptional. Weapons feel physical, movement does have consequences. Firefights can be brutal, unpredictable, and frequently intense. But those strengths remain surrounded by familiar problems involving enemy behaviour, positional audio, frame pacing, graphical instability, and unnecessarily confusing interfaces. This review is based on approximately 12 hours or so of testing, including gameplay tests that I made 2 years ago when I didn't recommend the game. Since then, we've got training, solo quick missions, and the new operations prologue, but cooperative play with an organised human team definitely makes this game stand out. This time round, I didn't have an opportunity to do that, but I'm already aware of how much more compelling the game is in multiplayer mode. So that limitation is important because Ground Branch is clearly much stronger and experienced when other players can compensate for what is a missing set of friendly AI, and they also help cover the tactical weaknesses of playing alone. So what sort of game is it? Ground Branch is a very tactical first-person shooter inspired by the deliberate military shooters of the late 1990s and early 2000s. You get to play as an operator working for the Ground Branch of the CIA Special Activities Center. Missions involve objectives such as hostage rescue, eliminating or capturing targets, gathering intelligence, and extracting from hostile locations. The maps are generally open enough to support multiple approaches and insertion points. You select your equipment, configure your weapons, and enter each mission without traditional arcade mechanics, such as regenerating health, hit markers, or constant enemy indicators. Combat is fast and completely lethal. One shot, more than enough to take you out. One mistake can end the entire mission. The new operations mode attempts to connect these missions through briefings, reoccurring characters, persistent progression, and an overarching campaign narrative. Now, I have to say, the voice actors that they've employed to do this have been spectacular, and the whole delivery of the experience, again, really, really high quality. However, version 1.0 provides only the prologue, containing just 2 missions set before the main campaign. 3 additional chapters are planned after launch. Proper friendly AI is also scheduled for chapter 1, but the published roadmap is tentative and does not establish any kind of guaranteed or even inferred release date. Ground Branch can therefore be played alone, cooperatively or competitively, but in its current state, it's best understood as a cooperative tactical sandbox with the opening framework of a future campaign rather than a completed single-player tactical experience. It just hasn't reached that point yet.
Weapons up. Handle this cleanly.
Gameplay and depth. The core combat is Ground Branch's greatest achievement. Movement must be controlled carefully. Running increases weapon sway, meaning that sprinting into an engagement leaves you unable to fire with any kind of precision. Different weapon-ready positions allow you to move through the environment without constantly pointing the muzzle directly ahead. Weapon length also matters. A full-size rifle can become very difficult to manipulate around doorways and confined interiors, whilst shorter carbines and submachine guns are more practical during close-quarter combat. Bullets originate from the weapon rather than the centre of the screen. This means that the relationship between your muzzle, optic, and surrounding cover has genuine consequences. These systems reward preparation and controlled movement rather than just reflex alone. The loadout system provides equally impressive freedom. You can choose from a substantial range of rifles, carbines, machine guns, and handguns before configuring them with suppressors, optics, magnifiers, grips, rails, magazines, and many other items of equipment. Attachments can be moved along the available mounting surfaces rather than snapping into a single predetermined position. Now that freedom is valuable because optic placement affects the usable sight picture, whilst weapon length and equipment weight influence how practical the final configuration becomes. Unfortunately, the interface makes this process considerably more difficult than is necessary, and the UI interface has not really evolved very much since I reviewed it 2 years ago. For new players, you are definitely going to be scratching your head trying to figure out where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do, etc., etc. To be fair to the game, once you get over that learning hurdle, everything does actually kind of make sense, but there's not enough guidance for new players, in my humble opinion. Now, during my testing, considerable time was spent trying to understand why rails were overlapping, where certain attachments could be placed, and why and where equipment that appeared correctly fitted was still producing configuration warnings. Depth should require thought. It should not require fighting against the user interface. Mission preparation is similarly awkward. The physical ready room is an interesting concept. I actually quite like it, particularly for cooperative groups who want to inspect equipment, test weapons, and agree on an insertion point. Now, for new or returning players, however, it can be unnecessarily confusing. I repeatedly found myself searching for the correct room, board, or menu simply to begin a mission or return to the main menu interface. Now, like I say, once you get past that, everything does make sense, but that initial learning curve is quite a turn-off for a lot of people. Now, I deliberately selected the hardest available settings to test the game on maximum setting. And the largest gameplay weakness has to be the enemy AI. Whilst the enemies were certainly lethal if they're looking at you, but that lethality must not be confused with tactical intelligence. Indeed, sometimes I was shot by characters that I still to this day have no idea where they were. Possibly behind a door, maybe outside, shooting me through a window, or maybe even shooting me through the floor or the walls. It's unclear. Enemies frequently fail to investigate obvious gunfire. They fail to respond or react consistently. Nobody wants to pursue me. They rarely appear to coordinate, flank, evade, or even reposition with any kind of believable purpose. The amount of people that I saw just standing, looking at a wall, in fact, on one occasion, if I can find this little snippet, there were two guys at the top of the stairs. This is after I released a grenade downstairs to clear one of the rooms. They were both standing at the top of the stairs, facing away from the stairs at a wall, and I just walked up behind them and shot them both. In another operation, this is part of the campaign, a helicopter lands beside the objective area without producing a convincing response from the nearby guards. They seem to be unfazed or even unaware that a helicopter has just put down 25 feet away from their base. During other encounters, enemies remain in passive positions after multiple shots had already been fired, and at the opposite extreme, an enemy could occasionally detect and kill me through an extremely narrow angle that I could barely see or properly return fire through. What that produces is an inconsistent layer of difficulty, certainly not realistic. Sometimes the opposition appears oblivious to your existence. Sometimes it becomes instantly lethal, like a Terminator. Neither behaviour resembles an intelligent tactical opponent. Whilst the developers describe version 1.0 as introducing smarter and deadlier AI, including revised perception, suppression, morale, and guard behaviour, the deadlier element was clearly demonstrated, the smarter element far less convincing. The weapon handling, customization, and mission structure provide considerable tactical potential, but the unfinished campaign, the cumbersome interfaces, the poor enemy behaviour and reasoning just prevent the game from really achieving its full potential. Now, this is what makes reviewing this game so very difficult, because Ground Branch is a highly immersive game. When all the systems connect and everything works well together, the immersion is insanely good. The true first-person perspective means that the camera exists within the character's physical body rather than just floating around independently from it. You can see your equipment, your weapon position, and exposed limbs. If part of your body extends beyond cover, it can potentially be seen and hit. The minimal interface also helps maintain focus on the environment and the experience. Now, there are no constant hit markers, enemy outlines, or arcade-style score notifications reassuring you that every target has been eliminated. You must observe the result yourself. Now, this uncertainty is extremely effective at building that immersion and intensity, especially when you're trying to clear a building, for example. A target may fall behind furniture or disappear through a doorway, leaving you uncertain whether or not the threat has actually been neutralized. But unfortunately, this is not smart AI behavior, it's just random. And unfortunately, you can't rely on it to be effective in any way, shape or form. Enemies can become extremely difficult to identify inside dark rooms, beneath aircraft, or against complex backgrounds. And indeed, if you have the wrong configuration for your weapon, you won't be able to hit a guy that's 20 feet in front of you. That forces the player to slow down, inspect angles, and make decisions without perfect information. Several missions produce genuine tension. Entering an aircraft and moving through a darkened compound and clearing rooms alone created the constant expectation that one unseen enemy could end the operation and your life immediately. Unfortunately, the immersion breaks regularly. Enemies sometimes call out after having already appearing to have died. Characters can become visible through doors or walls or surfaces. The camera can behave unpredictably, especially after climbing or interacting with the environment. Graphical freezes occasionally allow the game to continue processing movement whilst the displayed image remains stationary, and that will often get you killed. A tactical environment cannot remain convincing when armed guards fail to respond logically to nearby gunfire or appear to forget that an attack is even taking place. The physical relationship between the player, the weapon, and the environment is excellent. The behaviour of the wider world, though, is considerably less impressive. So whilst Ground Branch creates some outstanding tactical tension, bugs and artificial enemy behaviour repeatedly remind you that the simulation is less complete than the presentation might suggest. Another one of Ground Branch's strongest areas is audio. Rifles and handguns sound powerful, particularly inside confined spaces. Suppressed weapons remain clearly audible rather than becoming the unrealistic whispers that is often presented by modern games. The sound contributes directly to the sense that every engagement is dangerous. Environmental audio is considerably weaker though. I repeatedly hear footsteps, movement or objects being disturbed without being able to determine exactly where the sound has originated from. Basic left and right positioning was sometimes apparent. Distance, elevation, precise placement, far less reliable. And that distinction is important. In a tactical shooter, hearing movement is not enough. The player needs to determine where someone is approaching from, especially if they're in an adjoining room. Moving along the floor, above, or standing outside the building, these are really important aspects to the game. Without that information, the audio creates unnecessary anxiety without providing the spatial evidence required in order for you to make a tactical decision. During one mission, I was forced to leave cover and investigate because I could hear movement. I could not establish exactly whether it was nearby, above, behind a wall. That uncertainty ultimately exposed me to unnecessary danger. Some ambient sounds were also difficult to distinguish from potential enemy movement. Wind, machinery and environmental objects could resemble footsteps or furniture being disturbed. Now this may occasionally be realistic, but the repeated inability to place important sounds suggests a weakness in positional mixing and occlusion rather than deliberate ambiguity. The weapons sound suitably dangerous, but the environmental soundscape does not provide the directional precision expected from a serious tactical shooter. Graphics. Now, to some, Ground Branch can look excellent. The weapons are highly detailed and their attachments appear physically integrated rather than cosmetically applied. The environments are grounded and functional in that they are quite realistically set out. You've got aircraft, hospital, compounds, training facilities, industrial locations, all contain believable tactical spaces rather than existing purely as decorative scenery. But nothing is destructible. Another major point to sort of dislodge that immersion. Maps support a mixture of long sightlines, exposed exterior approaches, and confined interior combat. The aircraft environment was particularly effective. Its narrow corridors and multiple levels created an extremely dangerous close-quarters scenario, whilst the exterior provided an open angle from which distant enemies could be observed and also observe the player. I'd say lighting was another strength. Dark rooms, bright exterior opening, and areas of deep shadows regularly make target identification difficult. The ability to shut down electricity boxes, thereby throwing the enemy into darkness, does do quite a bit to help you stay alive. And that's appropriate for a game built around careful observation rather than immediate visual clarity. Unfortunately, technical instability repeatedly compromises the visual presentation. I have encountered flickering surfaces, graphical artifacts, clipping, and objects appearing incorrectly through surrounding geometry. There were also moments where large portions of the image were visibly glitched or stopped updating. These problems are not merely cosmetic. When identifying a small target through an optic or trying to determine whether movement behind a vehicle is an enemy or not, means unstable rendering directly affects combat. Some scopes also become excessively blurred or obstructive, making distant targets difficult to identify, even when the enemy appeared to be able to engage you accurately. Ground Branch has a strong environmental and weapon art system. Unfortunately, it lacks the consistency and polish required to present that work reliably. Whilst the game is very detailed, atmospheric, and visually convincing at times, persistent graphical faults prevent it getting a decent score. So the technical execution is where Ground Branch, well, it's one of its weakest pillars, I have to say. Issues I highlighted 2 years ago continue to plague the game. Whilst the frame counter frequently remains close to 60 frames per second during 4K testing, the displayed experience does not resemble a consistent 60 frame per second presentation. There were repeated micro-stutters, momentary freezes, and larger interruptions where the image appeared to stop whilst the game continued accepting input. This is more consistent with poor frame pacing, asset streaming, or related technical instability than a simple lack of average performance. The game's automatic benchmark selected epic graphic settings for my system, but those settings produced an unsatisfactory experience. Reducing several options to medium appeared to improve stability somewhat, but it did not remove every single graphical or performance issue that I was experiencing. The issue is, therefore, not simply that player selected unrealistic settings, graphic settings too high for your graphics card. The game recommended a configuration, and then it did not deliver a smooth experience. Movement around slopes, doorways, bushes, and confined areas all become quite awkward because none of this stuff is really modelled particularly well, so it's just a large obstruction box in the way. Ground Branch provides considerable control over your movement, aiming, and equipment. That configurability is valuable for experienced players, but incredibly confusing for those new players. The default experience should still be coherent and functional before the player begins to modify it. But nearly 8 years of early access makes these long-standing problems much harder to excuse. The official Steam description still acknowledges rough edges and lists several potential previously planned full version features, including friendly AI, improved enemy AI, more polished audio, and general quality of life improvements. But version 1.0 arrives without resolving any of those areas at all. The game is playable, don't get me wrong, but persistent stutters, graphical faults, inconsistent interactions, and cumbersome interfaces remain far below the standard expected from a finished tactical shooter. So in terms of realism, Ground Branch earns a meaningful simulation bonus because many of its player-side systems do influence behaviour rather than existing merely for decoration. You've got running, which will increase your weapon sway and reduce your accuracy. You've got weapons, which have physical presence. You've got sight placement, which will affect the usable sight picture. You've got long weapons, become difficult inside confined spaces. You've got body position. Exposure matters, bullets originate from the muzzle, movement speed, readiness position, environmental obstructions all influence how safely and accurately the player can progress. So these systems do successfully encourage realistic tactical habits. You must control your movement before firing. You must consider the size and configuration of the weapon before entering a confined area. You must also understand that seeing through an optic does not automatically mean the muzzle has cleared the surrounding cover. The absence of arcade feedback is equally effective. There are no conventional hit confirmations reassuring the player that every target fired at was indeed hit. Targets must be observed and areas must be cleared carefully. Unfortunately, simulated reality requires the entire tactical environment to behave credibly. It's not enough just to simulate the operator while surrounding that operator with enemies who lack any kind of believable reasoning. The AI will not consistently investigate danger. It will not preserve its own life. It does not reliably communicate, pursue, flank, evade, or respond collectively to an ongoing attack. Increasing enemy accuracy and reaction speed makes them far more difficult, but it does not make them realistic. The absence of friendly AI, again, is damaging. Ground Branch portrays coordinated special operations, but forces solo players to perform every role personally, and it's just too difficult to do it on solo. There is no teammate holding the rear. No one covers the doorway whilst you collect intelligence. Nobody supports a breach or watches another angle. The result is a tactical simulation whose strongest intended experience currently requires the player to supply a group of reliable human operators themselves. The player mechanics are unusually authentic, but the enemy and the friendly AI systems just don't support the same standard or simulated reality. Ergo, doesn't all work together properly. So to sum everything up, Ground Branch is an excellent tactical shooter foundation that has reached version 1 without really resolving any of the issues that were highlighted by me specifically a good 2 years ago, and probably by numerous other players as well. Whilst its weapon handling is detailed, physical and demanding, its customization systems are exceptionally detailed and provide great levels of freedom. And the environment supports slow, deliberate tactical operations, and combat can be brutally intense. When Ground Branch runs smoothly and the player is working with a coordinated human team, it really can deliver an experience that very few modern shooters can come anywhere close to. Unfortunately, its greatest weaknesses are equally significant, which means that hitting those highs is not a guarantee. The enemy AI is lethal, yes, but completely unintelligent. Enemies who happen to be facing you can kill you almost immediately, yet those same enemies may fail to investigate nearby gunfire, pursue an attacker, evade danger, or coordinate a believable response. In fact, they may just stare at the wall and let you walk up behind them and shoot them in the head. The difficulty comes from accuracy and reaction speeds rather than tactical reasoning, and the version 1.0 campaign is not complete. It contains a 2-mission prologue, while the 3 main chapters are planned for later dates, but no idea when that might be. Proper friendly AI has also been delayed until Chapter 1, but again, no guaranteed release date. That's a serious omission after almost 8 years of early access, particularly because friendly squad AI had been identified as part of the intended full version experience from day one.
We're rerouting you to a small hideout within the city to lay low while we line up an alternative extraction method. Check your tablet for coordinates.
Persistent stutters, graphical faults, weak positional audio, and cumbersome interfaces all make version 1.0 feel more like another major development milestone than anything like a genuinely finished release. Ground Branch is recommended to some. I'm going to say overall not recommended, but there is a caveat. Its strengths are substantial enough to justify that a recommendation for players with a reliable cooperative team. So if you've got a bunch of guys that you can rely on to turn up and be part of your human team, then yes, you can have huge amounts of fun with this game. Buy it for that reason, or buy it for the authentic weapon handling, extensive customization, the demanding firefights, and organised multiplayer operations. But do not buy it and expect a complete campaign. Don't expect decent AI, even on the most difficult settings. Don't expect human AI teammates at all. And even if they do exist coming down the line, my fear is they're going to be just as thick as the enemy AI are currently. The whole game lacks polish, and version 1.0, bearing in mind the last time I looked at this was a couple of years ago, it really hasn't evolved or improved or fixed any of the issues that I highlighted back then. The developer has simply ignored the feedback that people like me, and I'm sure others, have provided, and that is going to come back to bite him hard, I think. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, take care. Goodbye for now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're back. We hit like a truck. Heavy bass and grit. We're about to erupt. Feel the tremors shake. Feel the earth coming alive with the rhythm in our veins. We got that drive. Yeah. We will rock you. Hear the anthem loud, shouting from the rooftops. Yeah, we're roaring proud in this world of chaos. We stand side by side with metal in our hearts. It's a thunderous ride, kicking down the doors, breaking every chain. Together we ignite the fire, feel the pain. I wonder when I scream this song to you, will we stand forever strong? Nothing we can't do. If the sky fell down, will we still be the same? Cause we rise from the ashes, playing the game. Yeah, we're back. Yes, we're back in black. Better watch your step, we're on the attack. Whoa. We're halfway there, no turning back now. Feel the beat drop hard, raise your hands and vow. Yeah, living on a prayer, but we ain't goodbyes. Take my hand, we'll conquer all the lies. Whoa, the sweet sound of a fight. We're the children of the night, glowing in the light. From the shadows we rise, with metal in our blood, screaming out the truth, drown in the flood. With the lights out, we'll face the danger ahead. Here we are now, entertain your dread. I feel the rush, electric in my soul. Get your motor running, lose control. We won't. Yes, we're back in black. Better watch your step, we're on the attack. Whoa. We're halfway there, no turning back now. Till we drop hard, what screams and shouts. Looking for adventure on this crazy ride with every ounce of will. We're breaking the tide, gonna make it happen. Reach for the stars, from the chaos we rise. We wear our scars, come on everybody, put your fists up high. We're living in the moment, no time for the shine. Take the world in your hands, give it a shake with every beat of our hearts. This is what we must. So we ride on the waves of a thunderous roar.